Everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar. The Workplace Wellness Program is dead. Now what? My name is Jackie Zimmerman. I'm the manager of public education partnerships and e-learning, and I'll be helping to moderate today's session. I have just a few notes for everyone before I introduce our speakers. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out to all registrants within 1 week. We currently do not offer CEUs, but we can provide a certificate of attendance. I'll post the link to that in the chat here shortly. You'll have to fill out a form to request one, and they're emailed out within 1 week. We will also put that link in your follow-up email along with the recording and all of the resources that are shared here today. So if anything ends up in the chat that you're not able to grab, don't worry, that will come in a follow-up email. We also encourage you to complete a post-webinar survey that will pop up as soon as you exit the webinar today, and we'll also email out the link in case you miss it. Anyone who fills out that post-webinar survey will receive a 10% promotion code to use at the MHA store. So we strongly encourage you to complete the survey and give us some feedback on today's session. Which leads me to introduce our speakers for today. With us, we have Taylor Adams, the Director of Workplace Mental Health at Mental Health America, and Jen Gregory, the Human Resources Manager at Barilla America. Taylor Adams is MHA's Director of Workplace Mental Health, leading its Bell Seal for Workplace Mental Health National Employer Certification and annual Mind the Workplace reports. She's passionate about discovering and sharing concepts and practices that support people and their mental health within the workplace. Welcome, Taylor. We also have with us Jen Gregory, who's the Human Resource Manager for Barilla America, with several years of experience in healthcare administration, energy services, and most recently, the manufacturing industry. Jen has always worked diligently to create an environment that allows all employees to feel safe and supported while at the workplace. She's dedicated to equity and strives to create a culture that allows everyone in her presence to be their authentic selves. Welcome, Taylor and Jen. We are so excited to have you both here today to share more about becoming a workplace wellness advocate and to hear a little bit about how Barilla has become a 2-time Platinum Bell Seal recipient. I will let Taylor take it away.
Thank you, Jackie. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank everyone who's joining us live today. I will say this is the first time I'm sharing a little bit more personally about my background, so I've been a bit nervous for this, but I really hope it resonates with folks. So just wanted to go over the flow of today's event. First, we're going to hear a little bit about who can be a workplace wellness advocate. The answer may not surprise you, but hopefully it does inspire you. We're going to talk a little bit about shifting from that mindset of workplace wellness as a program to a person-first approach. And then we'll discuss the workplace wellness journey of Barilla. And I'm really excited about our conversation with Jen. I've known her for several years, and I have very distinct memories of what we first met and all the amazing work that they do. So stay tuned for that. Okay. So I want to start at the beginning, specifically kind of my professional beginning, just to provide you a sense of where I'm coming from. In my lifetime, I've worked for a national fast food chain serving hangry customers who would have the occasional meltdown over melted cheese on a burger. I've also worked in a local greeting card shop where I would wrap gifts for customers who would then express a lot of love and admiration for the people that they were buying the gifts for. One memory I have is there was this man who came in, and for like the past 15 years, he would buy his wife a snowman figurine for every Christmas. And just the love of him telling this story was just such a memorable moment for me working at the card store. I've also worked in a retail clothing boutique. I would listen to customers share about what they were buying their outfits for, whether it was a job interview, their first solo vacation abroad, whether they were getting an outfit for a first date. I've also worked for a childcare center, caring for arguably the most difficult client population, children between 6 months and 8 years. And today I work for Mental Health America, which is a national mental health advocacy organization, where I've happily dedicated the last 7 years of my professional career. Each of these workplaces vary in industry and size, from 7 workers to 150,000 workers. Each role that I held had very distinct responsibilities, had required different skill sets, and they're also in different parts of the country. So what is the common thread between all these things? My best memories and hardest lessons from each workplace stem from the experiences that I shared with my managers, my coworkers, and the people that I served. So let that thought kind of marinate in your head, and we will come back to why this is important in just a second. So, slight pivot. I do want to share a personal example of advocacy in action within the workplace. So, I began my first job at a fast food restaurant at the age of 17. I was also a high school student at the time, and I wrote this article for a school newspaper called The Flame, which, for context, our mascot was the dragons. Um, and it was about my experience of being a student and also a part-time worker. And I pulled a few direct quotes to share with you, and I wanted to kind of dive into them a little bit. And this was actually an article, like you can see that it's weathered from the picture because I had just kept it in a personal file for years now, because of, just what it meant to me at the time and what it still means to me now. So the first thing that I pulled directly from this article, my work experiences at the time deeply affected my mental health. Um, I had experienced my first depressive episode at this time. I was kind of like navigating with, some mental health challenges to begin with. And what I experienced on this job had definitely exacerbated what was going on already. Um, and because it had impacted me so much, I began researching minor labor laws. I'm not sure how many students were researching their rights on the Department of Labor website, like I was at the time, but I did include kind of your main points in this article to let students know that they did have rights if they were also working. Um, so this is I shared a detailed example of how the work was affecting my mental health. I worked such a distinct memory for me. I worked a 9-hour shift in what we call the hole, which basically is a small room closed off from the rest of the restaurant where you take the orders for drive-through, the people who come through the drive-through lane. I worked 9 hours without a break. I couldn't use the restroom. I didn't have lunch or any meals or any snacks. I couldn't talk to my other coworkers. I was actually explicitly told to stay in the hole. And I was really afraid to speak up about, speak up and stand up for myself. I didn't want to disappoint my managers. I didn't want to lose my job. I did, to a degree, depend on it as I was saving up for college and paying for gas for a new car and, goals I wanted to accomplish. And the fear of speaking up and the consequences were just too great. I was in so much physical and mental pain by the end of my shift, and I had begun crying in the hole. Very fitting. And I began crying towards the end of my shift, and I had a mother with her son in the backseat of the car pull up to the drive-through window, and the look on her face, I'll always remember. She was like, "Oh my gosh, sweetie, are you okay?" Like clearly seeing that I'm in distress. And she was the first person that day to show me that type of compassion. Um, and here pulling directly from the article, I left work that day. I felt dizzy. I was in tears. I was overwhelmed, and I did not know how to handle it. I didn't have any support in handling how I felt then. I pulled this third quote here because it is the first mention in the article of worker well-being, which is a huge topic for today's event. My perspective and expertise on worker well-being has evolved over the course of my career, especially being at Mental Health America. My lived experience at age 17 matters too. And I want to give just this story a bit of a happier ending. I did report the issues to a head supervisor who fortunately took those concerns seriously. At least for me, I don't know if I can speak for the staff as a whole. And I unfortunately have no metrics on, that shows the impact of who read this article, if anyone actually took a look at it. I have no idea if my employer actually changed its less than legal workplace practices, but it still feels, to this day, it still feels really amazing to imagine that if even one student had read the article, that they better understood their rights, their value in the workplace, and safeguarded their well-being as a result of that. I've learned a lot of hard lessons working in the workplace wellness arena, but I've also learned that I am in fact qualified and capable of influencing positive change within a workplace. And it's a power that I've had since I began working at 17. I think you know where I'm going with this, but with the right intentions and support, and that's a huge piece of this, all workers, including the over 600 people on this call right now, have that power too. So let's get to the heart of it. The workplace wellness program has been pronounced dead, hence the title. And I am thrilled because now we get to have the real conversations, and in my opinion, the most interesting and exciting and challenging conversations about worker well-being and what it takes to actually move the needle in this space. So it is a time to shift from thinking about workplace wellness as a separate one-off program to workplace wellness as a fundamental function of a successful and healthy organization. And this is driven by its people and its practices. So I'm sure many of you have seen the recent study that came out from Oxford University's Wellbeing Research Center that kind of shows, some of these things that we're talking about. So the study determined that individual level mental well-being interventions, so things like relaxation classes, well-being apps, apps for mindfulness, actually do very little to boost the health and wellness of workers, and then concluded that core organizational practices really should be the focus. And I do want to just note and clarify that mindfulness, sleep, and other healthy wellness habits are important and are definitely a part of this conversation. But the workplace programs that solely focus on promoting those habits from an individual level are just one piece of a much larger puzzle in improving worker mental health. And we were excited to see this study came out because it reinforced a lot of the work we've been doing since 2015 with our Mind the Workplace research. I've pulled these stats from a 2022 report, but this isn't the latest. We do have updated report findings that you can look on the website that I think Jackie might share in the chat. And what we found to be the most impactful in improving worker mental health outcomes, having the greatest impact, creating that culture of positive mental health and well-being requires time, intention, and investment from all organizational levels. So this includes your leadership, your people managers, and workers to successfully support workers' well-being. If you remember just a couple slides ago, the common thread that I had mentioned, basically my best and worst workplace experiences centered around people. Workplace wellness is not about implementing a new program. It's very much about inspiring people at all organizational levels. So everybody has a responsibility and a role to create this culture. Inspiring people to think and act differently, in pursuit of improved mental health and an improved workplace culture. Okay, so I would really love if you were interested and willing to participate in this poll, this question that I'll share with you. So there are 3 different ways you can access the poll. You can just, and you can use either your phone or open up a new tab on your computer. But Menti.com, use the code or use the QR code, or Jackie will share the direct link in the chat there. But the question that I have for you, and we'll look at the results in a couple slides because it's relevant here, but how do you feel about your organization's workplace wellness efforts? And it's anonymous, so you can be honest here. And you have 3 different type of emotions you can share, but I want to reinforce we're looking for the feelings or emotions that come up when you consider your organization's efforts, maybe not so much what you think about them, if that makes sense. So I'll just give it a couple of seconds for people to be able to log into that. And we'll look at the results in just a bit, but we'll kind of move on here. So now we've talked about shifting our perspective a little bit from program to people and practices. Now what are some of the things that we can do? I will say this webinar won't do a really deep dive into the how, but I will share some of the resources that we offer to help you get started. So many of you are maybe familiar with this certification. Many of you may not be. But shifting from a program to person-centered approach to workplace wellness is not an easy thing. It is, we call it the workplace wellness journey for a reason, because there are ups and downs and setbacks and accelerating forward, and it's all over the map. And thinking about the workplace as an organism where all these things are kind of working together, it really is a journey and an evolution. Still, we know that organizations prioritizing workers' mental health benefit from that return on investment. So including improved morale, higher rates of engagement, better retention, reduced healthcare costs. I mean, the benefits of making sure that this is a priority for your workplace are really endless. And knowing many of you who are interested in joining this webinar already know this. But celebrating our...
Taylor, I don't mean to interrupt, but it seems like our people are having trouble with our Menti code. So I will encourage people to use the chat. So use the chat to post in there your experiences, and instead of putting it into the Menti, you can put it right into the chat. Thank you.
Oh man, that's a bummer.
I know.
Somebody did
Thanks for
test
your
this.
patience, everyone.
Yeah, I still encourage, it may not be anonymous, but still encourage you to share your emotions in the chat too, because we'll talk about that in just a second. But we are celebrating our 5th year of MHA's Bell Seal for Workplace Mental Health. It is the first national certification to assess and award employers that are committed to creating these mentally healthy workplaces. It was built on our MHA's foundation of research and advocacy, and it is a holistic valuation of employer practices. And we think back to the Oxford study where they mentioned core working practices or organizational practices that evaluates or looks at the entire worker experience. So this is everything from workers who live with a mental health or substance use condition, folks who have concern within a workplace, people who are thinking about their mental health, well-being in general. It covers all aspects of just overall happiness and well-being within a workplace. Since 2019, we've encouraged organizations of all sizes and industries to thoroughly review their practices as part of this certification, and then kind of discover what is supporting or what's hindering your workers' well-being in this space. I apologize that the Menti isn't working. Let me just, yeah, it appears that it isn't. I sincerely apologize there. But I want to share some of those feelings that people have about their organization's workplace wellness efforts. In my experience, I have noticed it's a wide spectrum, right? And a lot of it depends on your position within an organization, how much decision-making ability you have, how involved you are, if you're even interested in this topic. But it ranges from maybe you're just deeply disappointed, maybe you're very excited and proud. So let's talk through some of these emotions, and I'm going to kind of do it through the spectrum of these 4 pillars that we've developed the certification on. So the first thing that we have here, unmatched expertise. So for example, if you feel, and I was going to use the emotions you all share, but I'm going to just pull, pull some ones that I think might be relevant here. If you feel excited, hopeful, optimistic about either kickstarting or really accelerating your workplace wellness efforts, MHA provides a ton of different free resources to organizations at every stage of that workplace wellness journey. So from getting started to becoming thought leaders in the space and being an example for other employers that want to pursue this. If you said that you felt frustrated, hopeless, maybe disempowered, because you don't have the support you need to pursue your workplace wellness goals. Again, we're very mindful of creating resources for workers to help build that case to leadership, request certain type of support, lay out what are some of the strategies you want to pursue. So that's just one aspect of how we can help support and alleviate or reinforce some of those emotions that you have. The second pillar that we have here, distinct standard of excellence. So if you've cited, and this comes up very often, but if you feel uncertain or nervous, maybe you feel a little ashamed about where you're at with your workplace wellness efforts. Maybe you're like, there's absolutely no way we qualify for a certification. It's not something we consider. The Bell Seal certification is a framework. So anytime I have conversations with folks, I'm like, just take a look at the questions to even self-assess. If you're not necessarily interested in the full application and you're still on that journey, like that's perfectly, that's a part of the process, right? But it is a framework that can help identify opportunities for growth and then provide some of those resources to help you move forward from that point. Some folks may feel disconnected, disengaged. I've had people say they feel resentful, which, fun fact, that's a later stage sign of burnout. About what your workplace is doing to address or not address worker well-being. The certification validates if organizations, and we've seen this particularly in healthcare, education, and public sectors, see if these organizations are actually practicing what they preach, and if their internal practices reflect how they serve their communities, right? And we've all heard it's really difficult to be that support for others or serve others if you are not supported yourself. The third pillar that I want to share is that we want this certification to be a recognition that resonates with folks. So if you feel pleased, excited, hopeful, delighted, and you want to celebrate all the work you've been doing in this space, the certification does nationally recognize and promote your organization for the things that you do, for having that commitment, for being willing to kind of take a deep dive into what you offer and the practices that you offer and showcase that. Some folks are just unsure of what their workplace offers or curious. Again, this is something where it provides a bit more insight into the specific actions organizations are taking to support their workers. It really puts it under a bit of a microscope to see, like, okay, put your money where your mouth is. Where are we focusing our time and attention to make sure our workers feel supported? And then last bit, and I'll kind of wrap up here. Our final pillar is having it be kind of a collaborative process. So some emotions that you may have cited. So if you've ever felt nervous or fearful about maybe this is something you've come across, but you're like, we're not going to qualify. Maybe you receive a score that's lower than you expected. It is an opportunity to, one, recognize all the amazing work that you've done up to that point. We actually only have 1 in 4 employers nationally that qualify, so it is pretty rigorous, but you'd be surprised at the process and what the results might be. So we want to recognize all the good work that you're doing up to that point and hopefully encourage you to continue that momentum. It's also an opportunity to recognize that it's a workplace wellness journey. It requires continuous improvement and support from all those organizational levels. Okay, so I'm very excited to bring Jen back and kind of start our conversations. Welcome, Jen. I've said this a million times already, but super grateful that you've taken the time today. We can probably dive right in. I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Yep.
Okay, are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Great. So I think I mentioned before I'd met you a couple of years ago, and I do remember that meeting, and I was really excited about the work that you're doing. But I want to hear a little bit about what personally motivates you to do this work and support workers at Barilla.
Yeah, sure. So my journey kind of started, my passion, I should say, for mental health started with my niece. So she was diagnosed relatively early in her life with bipolar disorder. And I've watched her struggle through all of those challenges. She has attempted death by suicide, and those things led me to a realization that I needed to put forth an effort to understand mental health and recognize signs and symptoms so that I could help provide coping skills to her throughout her life. My motivation probably grew further in my professional life as the COVID pandemic started. So I was beginning to see employees who were coming to work, having all the additional stressors, bringing all of that in, right? So I knew I wanted to be a resource not only personally, but professionally for my employees. So I started researching different methods to educate myself. And then I was learning how to share that with others on the management team. I guess at the end of the day, personally, I just wanted everyone in my personal and professional life to be well, both inside and outside of work, and just to live their best life. And I wanted to help them do that.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you sharing that personal side of things. Thank you for sharing. So how you mentioned the pandemic, which I think has been a big thing that really brought this to the forefront for a lot of organizations. But how did your organization's efforts originate? Where did that stem from?
Yep, like you said, we are a manufacturing plant in a rural location in New York. So I was recognizing employees coming into work being more and more stressed. So we know that employees bring personal lives into work. I recognized we needed to be empathetic and we needed to provide resources for them. So as schools were shutting down, we were realizing that daycare was becoming a bigger issue for our employees. So we did something that was new and different for our organization, where we typically ran 4 basic shift schedules. They were 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and 7 p. to 7 a.m. And knowing again that childcare was such an issue, we asked our employees, what hours can you work for us? What can we make to alleviate the stress of daycare and to ensure that you still have a job so you don't add additional stressors to your life? So at one point, we had over 100 schedules that we were working with, which was really exciting. And we realized just seeing that one simple change made such an impact on all of our employees' lives that we were like, okay, we can do this. We can do simple things to help our employees on their wellness path.
Yeah, I hope you weren't the person who had to manage 140 different types. Or maybe you. Yeah,
No,
team
it was a
effort.
team effort. Yeah, sure.
I appreciate you. Like that's such a perfect example too of what mentioned previously of like those working practices and then also having empathy and having that person driven perspective on just taking care of people's needs. And that's been a big thing and a trend we're seeing with like the childcare, daycare, making sure that that's a dimension of like wellness is just having some basic needs cared for. That maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of when you think of workplace wellness, right? So what, I mean, if any kind of challenges or setbacks did you face as you were kind of making this transition?
Sure. Certainly. I mean, if we look at the schedules, like you said, we were managing multiple schedules. So we lost a little bit of communication there, with our employees. So we had to evolve there as well. But as we continued on our wellness path, one of the big things we were noticing was the lack of availability of resources. So again, employees who needed the face-to-face counseling, we didn't have that necessarily readily available. We all know that it can take several weeks, months to get in to see someone. So we've really ramped up our efforts there with sharing the EAPs. Certainly the 988 hotline has been helpful in different situations here. So that's really probably the biggest challenge we had was finding local providers to assist with some of our needs.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm pretty sure that's an issue that affects many different organizations just by having a workforce shortage in that area.
Yeah.
I mean, a whole that's a policy conversation for a much different day, but and that's something that kind of supplementing where some of those gaps are and including different programs or sharing free resources to help just fill in those gaps, I think is a really smart way to approach that. Especially it feels like it's a bit out of your hands in that case. So can you describe, and this positive or negative, I'm open to anything, but just describe your experience. You've kind of gone through the Bell Seal process at least twice, received platinum as a result, which is exciting, but just share a little bit about what that experience was like for you and Brilla.
Yeah, absolutely. So our experience was wonderful, quite honestly. You were always readily available to answer questions. The application process was really pretty easy, but probably the most exciting thing that came out of that application process for us was a little bit of what you talked about before. When you're answering the questions, we realized, wow, we really are doing a lot of good things here with our wellness programs for our employees. So it wasn't just flexible scheduling, but it was so much more of the little things that maybe you just become accustomed to doing and you're not thinking about. So I think the application process really brought us getting us thinking about new things, new and different things that we were doing, even though we weren't doing it for just an application process, if that makes sense. It was things we were doing because they were the right things to do. So, being an award winner was something that we are going to continue to strive for. We're going to continue to build on the wellness program, but it was certainly a rewarding experience from start to finish for us.
That's good to hear. I promise I did not script that. To say. No, that's really good to hear. I know just like when I first met, I think what I found really unique is that they had you had both someone who represented like the corporate headquarters and then someone representing like the manufacturing facility or plant were both on the same call, and you had worked really closely together to pull that initial application together, which is like such a big piece of like I've said it too many times, but like the all organizational level, all hands on deck approach to addressing it. So that's what really stood out to me. I first met. I'm like, oh, this is so cool, and it's been on my radar ever since. So did Bell Seal, did it kind of just like fit into your existing work? Did it something that enhanced it? Maybe slowed
Yeah.
down the workplace wellness journey?
No, it definitely didn't slow it down. I definitely think it fits into, it's a foundation of what I'm doing every day. So again, it was something that we were doing pieces of it that we just didn't realize that we would classify to, win an award, such as we did. But it was really a no-brainer for us, I think. The added focus to add more focus, even so, on the wellness program. So a lot, again, the application process got us thinking about different things we could do and areas where we could improve, things we could add on, but not in a stressful way. It was like, oh, there are other things, things we hadn't thought about that maybe other organizations were doing. Having the tools, the resources for employees was a huge help, but it definitely fit right into our everyday, the culture that we're striving to have here. So, yeah, I think it fit in nicely with what we were doing.
Great. And so one thing that always comes up with organizations is that it's hard to get that buy-in. It's hard to get people on board with some of these ideas, whether that's leadership, workers to participate. So did you have any challenges trying to convince leadership or workers to participate and take on this initiative?
Yeah, sure. So we're very fortunate here at Brilla. Like you mentioned, we work very closely with our corporate colleagues. So even though the initiatives here in Avon started locally, when I was building on the program, I was sharing that with the colleagues at the corporate office. So one of the things we did early on, we offered a voluntary program for employees to get certified in mental health first aid. Much to my surprise, I immediately had 25 people that were interested, wanted to take the certification class. We brought in the provider, we did that. Again, I shared that with the corporate office, and then they did the same thing. So to have that buy-in and to see your corporate leadership, your VPs, the president of the company, supporting that and thinking that it's, that's a great thing, let's do it here, certainly was nice and welcoming. So the corporate leadership has been wonderful. They allow us to do, again, we have, kind of a motto, let's do what's best for the employee, let's do what makes sense. So they allow us to do different things throughout the journey that you try new things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But definitely just having that support locally and at the corporate level has been good. So it didn't take, I didn't have to sell it too much because they saw the results. So when I can show that people are attending the different sessions, that they're interested in doing it, some increased morale, like you mentioned, we've seen some reduced turnover that I like to attribute is to some of the wellness initiatives that we're doing. So the leadership buy-in, both locally and at the corporate level, was pretty easy for me, which was a good thing. It's a good feeling when you're supported by both.
Yeah. That's such a cool example of, starting more at that local level and having that kind of trickle up and have an impact on the way, they do things
Yeah.
at the corporate level. Because I think that is a challenge for a lot of people. So I'm glad you've had that support and you've been on the same page with leadership. And I think my final question is, do you have any lessons learned or any kind of final things you want to share that organizations may benefit from? So whether it's leadership or other workers, would love to hear.
Yeah. One of our mottos is move forward with courage. So I love that. I think that, like I said, there are some things we've done that have been major flops, and that's okay. We learn from each one of those as well. So, but never give up. Just keep educating yourself. I think it's important for your own well-being to have that knowledge so that you can be a resource for other people. So really just at the end of the day, you're never going to feel bad about going above and beyond trying to help someone and do what's right for your employees. So, don't give up on the battle. Just keep forging forward.
You're so cool. I really enjoyed having you on here and then talking to you. Jackie's gonna pop back on, and if anyone had any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat for Jen or for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you, Taylor and Jen. Everything you've shared has been wonderful and super helpful for everyone. And we do have a few questions coming in through the chat that we can start to talk to. A couple for Jen. I'll start with Jen, any tips on how you started to share this with upper management so much so that they acted and listened? Just any of those tips for people who are starting to have those conversations and maybe struggling.
Yeah, so um, it's taken some years, I'm not going to lie, but just creating a culture where an environment where employees feel safe. So I definitely strive to create that open door policy. So I continually have employees coming in and sharing with me. So I can then use that feedback as confidentially as I can with our local management team. So I'm very forward with them, and I'm sharing with them that we have suicidal employees. We have employees that are dealing with elder care issues or whatever it might be. So um, just start by being empathetic and building that culture. In your own little HR world, right? So obviously I'm HR, so that's where I started. But once you once you do that and you share that care and compassion, not only with your employees, it spreads to your management team. So they get interested. When I was sharing some of the difficulties our employees were struggling with, that's when they said, "Well, what can we do?" So that's when I researched the mental health first aid stuff. And I said, this is a basic class that we can take. It'll give us some tools and resources, maybe some confidence to have conversations because, I'm one person here. So if I have more people on my team in the group that can do this, it's a big help every day. So I think just starting with creating that culture of being able to allow employees to feel safe and open with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know you've talked about mental health first aid and some other things, but um, if any, is there one program or benefit that you've implemented and that might be it that you feel has had the biggest impact on your employees?
Yeah, so again, it's been a journey. I think one of the most impactful things we're doing right now, I'm actually doing a monthly wellness program for our employees. And again, I'm using all of the things that I'm hearing from the employees. And we have a provider that comes in and does 4 sessions a month. So it hits every crew. Um, it's voluntary. I'm getting participants, which tells me I'm picking the right categories, which is good. But again, we've done a little bit of everything from elder care and the stressors that come from that, giving them resources, just things like meal trains and meals on wheels and things that they may not know are available in their local communities. Um, but again, just listening to the employees and hearing what their needs are. So we have a bunch of upcoming programs. Again, we do it once a month. Bring in a little bit of food. That always helps get people there, right? So um, yeah, I think that that's probably been really impactful for us because they're seeing, again, we're investing in them. We're giving them time, paid time to come attend these programs. It's not just about making pasta. It's about making sure their well-being as a person is whole. There.
Absolutely. Someone else had asked, what did you find as being the best method of learning more about your employees' well-being, mental health struggles? And I know you said, listening to employees is the most important thing. How have you kind of facilitated those conversations, and really learned about the needs of your employees?
Yep. So again, I have an open door policy that extends. It's a double-edged sword, but they all do have my personal phone number, which is a double-edged sword, like I say.
Yeah,
But um, having a resource to always be available to them, I think, is a great way. But beyond that, we do all of the simple things too. We use SurveyMonkey. We ask them. We're continually going out to them with what's bothering you, what's going on. We're just getting that feedback, and it's not necessarily always just driven from human resources, right? I'm looking for the feedback from the other colleagues on the floor or the supervisors who are really the ears on the ground for us. So they're bringing that back. And again, when we have a culture that it feels free to share that information back, we can then develop the programming around that.
Absolutely. Another question we had come in for you, Jen, is how do you go about implementing these sessions with employees when there's multi-shift staggered workforce at your company?
Yep. So most of our start times, most of the people are here. They're 12-hour shifts that the majority of our hourly employees are working. So we're trying to bring people in right around their meal period. So 11 a.m., noon for the day shift. And then at night, I have a provider. Again, this was one of the difficulties, but finding someone local that would actually come in on the off shift. So doing the 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Meetings or whatever. So we try to find a time where the majority of employees are available or will be on site. We also open that up. We've welcomed employees' families. So if there's a topic that particular month where they feel like a spouse or a partner, a child might be beneficial to them, we've invited them to come in as well. So if it doesn't work on their shift, they can come off shift, they can come, we try to make it when the majority are here, but we offer them to come in for the other sessions as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. I have a couple questions for you, Taylor, that came in. This was a really great question from someone asking, where can we find resources on how employers and workers can shift from a workplace wellness program mindset to a workplace wellness as an integrated organizational philosophy and approach?
That's a verbatim from the I think our session description. So Mental Health America offers a variety of free resources. We do have a workplace wellness resource center, maghnational.org /workplace. It is like everything else, a journey with continuous improvement. So we are always adding new free resources to that site. And it's broken up into different levels depending on where your organization is at. In addition to information about, we talked about the certification, we talked about a little bit about the research that we do, but we also have sections dedicated for employees and then a section dedicated for employers. In the employer section, we have more sections. It's just a bunch of different categories, but we have, I guess you could say 4 levels. So it kind of starts at getting started. So if you are just introducing this conversation in your workplace, it is a lot of reducing stigma, raising awareness. How do you have this conversation as a manager with your employee? There's postcards, there's handouts, and then just a lot of information you can read through and tips. And then we also, if you go up each level, and it's completely slipping my mind what the second level is called, but this will focus more on people management and emotional intelligence. Managerial support, since we've started doing research in 2015 to this day, continues to be such a driving factor in people's everyday experience at work. So we do have a lot, particularly in that section, if you're looking to move beyond just raising awareness and reducing stigma and thinking about those policies that you may not necessarily connect to well-being or mental health. The next section that we have is resources for, I remember the name of the category. It's leveling up, and then the next one is investing, something along the lines of investing more. So this is probably activities that require more financial support, things that are gonna, you really need to get that leadership buy-in to pursue. But again, we have some resources that are like, how do you ask for that support from leadership? We have like a template you can use to, if you're asking for financial support, if you're asking for just permission to start an employee resource group or a business resource group, is all under there. And then the final section that we have focuses on becoming a thought leader. So there's a lot, and this is probably the most relevant to the question. So this has a lot of information on how you can build out a strategy. So starting with the strategy, being very intentional about, especially if you're limited in resources, you want to be very thoughtful about how you spend and how you invest and what has the greatest impact. So we have just like an outline on how to build that strategy and some tips. We do have some suggested survey questions. So if you are, Jen has really great examples of just all of the work that they do is driven by worker feedback. So what questions could you ask to help form what next steps you could take? So I could go on and on, but there's a lot of different things. It's just a matter of going into the resource center and exploring kind of what fits your needs.
Absolutely. Thank you, Taylor. And Susie and I dropped some of those links in the chat for those resources. We'll also include all of them in your follow-up email so everyone can dig in and explore based on your needs and your company's needs. We've had a few different questions coming in, Taylor, just about different parts of the Bell Seal application, and specifically kind of what if people have applied in the past and haven't qualified, should they try again? How do you move forward? What steps are given kind of year to year to help people reach the goal that they need to be able to be certified and support their employees best?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one aspect of the program is, just MHA as a whole, but also as part of our workplace wellness initiatives, is that we have a really robust network of only in-house expertise, but also the collaborators that we work with, our partners. We have a affiliate network of over 140 affiliates across the country. So it is a matter of kind of identifying what those needs are, and the certification is a good way in pinpointing what some of those needs are, and then connecting them with the right resources, whether that's with MHA or with our, more of our external network. We've had organizations that apply and maybe they didn't quite meet, it starts at bronze level, which you have to achieve like 60 out of 100 points to get to that first level of certification. There are opportunities, and this is part of that like collaborative process pillar where whether it's before you submit, there's an opportunity to schedule calls after you submit. There's a lot of support that we try to provide to organizations that are going through this process. Right before I hopped on this webinar, I had a call with an organization that was getting ready with their application and just, helping to answer some of the questions that they have, but also identifying maybe some things that they can share up. And that's at the start of applying. So there's a lot of different options there. We do have a quick survey you can take. So if you are unsure of, do we even qualify? Is this something to consider? Do we have years of work to go, or are we kind of on track here? So we do have it takes a couple minutes, and it's basically a checklist to go through, and it gives you like a preliminary score. So that results are subject to change once you actually submit a full application, but it is a pretty accurate way to see where you might land, and hopefully shared in the chat, or we'll share in that in the follow-up.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw Alexis's question about, is there a list outside of the application to see where you fall on the scale? Yep, that would be that pre-survey. So you'll be able to take that and get a good idea of where to go from here, if you're qualifying, what level you would land in, and then kind of next steps. So that's a great place to start for anyone who would be interested in the Bell Seal. Taylor, any other comments on that pre-survey?
My goal, this is more my internal goal, but I do hope to make that resource a bit more expansive because people have found it very helpful. It's pretty limited now. It does just give you the preliminary score, level of recognition, and not much beyond it, but that is something I hope to continue to build out this year to make it just a more functionally useful tool for people. I did have a quick question for Jen, because knowing that you're a pasta company, you mentioned that you provide food as a small incentive to get folks to participate. what type of food do you serve?
No, it's not pasta, sadly. We usually bring in pizza, wings. We have a lot of pizza places here locally. We do try to be mindful, again, of the healthy lifestyle. So we bring in the salads and do salad bars and that kind of thing. So it just depends on the crew and how many people we have that we think are going to come and what we bring in. But the corporate office is great. They actually have a chef there, so they do get the pasta meals pretty often. So yeah, there's a reason for me to want to work there.
That's funny. I'm team like pizza and wings, especially
Yeah,
you're in New York, so there's gotta be.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I know we are close to the end of the hour and we have a few last questions that are coming through just logistic wise that I want to remind everyone and wrap up. First of all, thank you so much, Jen. Thank you, Taylor, for being here, for sharing with us, and providing just some really great resources and information for everyone joining. We hope this all has inspired you to be workplace advocates and champions. And we're going to be sending out, I know people have been asking about all these resources, all of the links in the chat that we put in and all of the different resources we've discussed today will come in a follow-up email along with the recording. So I know other people too have been asking about the recording and sharing this with others at your workplace, which is a great step to share this and just start the conversation in your workplace about how you can best support employee mental health. We encourage you to learn more about the Bell Seal certification. There's that link on the screen that'll come in your follow-up. Access our resource center, and that will also come in your follow-up. And if you have specific questions for Taylor or the team, you can email us. So feel free to do that. Like Taylor said, when you're applying for the Bell Seal, there's so much support there for you. And she's really able to walk you through to make sure that all of your questions are answered and next steps are figured out. It's a collaborative process. And the purpose is so that we can best support employee mental health and well-being. So we're really excited for our new cohort and applications that are coming through for Bell Seal certification. We encourage everyone to take that pre-survey, see where you're at, and apply for the Bell Seal. So thank you all so much for being here, for your fantastic questions, for engaging today. And by being here, you're taking the first step to say you care about employee mental health and want to continue this process. So we encourage you to continue down that path. Thank you all. Just a reminder, everything will be sent out within the next week. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Taylor and Jen.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Jen.
Yeah, thank you.